The next step in your evolution as a Docker developer is to learn all about how to manage multiple containers, environments, etc. with Swarms or Kubernetes. Both tools are amazing, and you can take a look at both and then decide which one fits best for your style and needs. In certain scenarios, you can use both of them together. Let's explore Swarms first. Swarms is a tool from Docker and is enabled by default. This tool allows to cluster, manage, and schedule containers. So you could, with Swarm, manage one big cluster of containers. The machines in the Swarm can be physical or virtual and are then referred to as a node. In each node, you have your containers. So you could have multiple containers in a node depending on the resources available in the node. With a Swarm Manager, you define and manage the entire cluster of nodes, which contains their own containers and could do load balancing across all your nodes. In this chapter, we'll be covering the fundamentals of using swarms. But if you enjoy working with this tool, feel free to explore our library for more content on the subject. Okay, so now that we know about the basics of Swarm, let's go and create our first swarm. So the way it works, you have the manager, basically the host machine that controls the swarm, and then the workers. Let's put this into practice. You can use physical machines or virtual to create a swarm. In this case, we'll use our host computer as the manager and then add virtual machines with Docker to the swarm. So first, we need to create the node that will become the swarm manager. So let's go ahead and bring up the terminal first. So I'm going to bring up a new terminal. And it's very simple. All you have to do is do Docker swarm and then init. And basically that is going to initialize a swarm for you. And that's how simple it is. So basically what you have here is the command to add a worker to the swarm. So what you would do is SSH into the machine that you want to add to the swarm. And then once you're actually in the machine, you could basically run this command and it's going to add that machine to the swarm. You want to make sure that you have Docker installed on that machine as well. So right now what we did is a single node swarm as opposed to multi-node. So when you do this internally in a machine like what we just did, you can only do single node swarm. If you want to do multi-node swarm, you need to have multiple machines, either virtual or physical. So now what we could do is do Docker info, like usual, and it's going to give you all the information on your Docker install and all the containers and the swarms that you have installed. So if we look all the way up, you're seeing that we have 4 containers, 3 of them are stopped, 1 is running, we have 10 images, and then if we scroll down, you're going to see that you have a swarm right here. So the swarm is active, and then you have the node ID for the swarm, and this is the master again, or the manager as they call it. And basically this guy will manage all the other workers that are added to the swarm. So if you want to take a look at the list of nodes that you have, you can do the command docker node ls. So basically the same command that we would do if we wanted to list the containers. So docker ls, in this case, we're doing docker node ls. And now we see that we have one manager that is this particular ID here, and this is the swarm. So as you can see, it's fairly easy to create a new swarm with a node. Okay, so now we have a swarm created. So you can add a node to the swarm if you want. When using the approach we just did, which is a single node swarm, you can deploy a stack to your swarm by leveraging the compose command. So let's say, for example, we wanted to add workers to the swarm we just created. You could literally go into the actual directory where you have a Docker compose file like this, and then basically add all these services to your swarm. So we could go in here and let's make sure we're in the right directory. We are, so we can see the Docker compose file. So you would do something like this command. So docker stack deploy, and then the actual YAML file. So docker compose.yaml, like so, and then name your stack. And this would create a stack for you. So if you have access to multiple machines, physical or virtual, you can add nodes to the swarm leveraging the command that was displayed when you initialize the swarm. So if we go back to the command that was shown earlier, like I mentioned, what you could do is SSH into the machine that you want to add to the swarm and then use this command. So that's basically how simple it is to add nodes to a swarm, either physical, virtual, or you can even use the Docker Compose file to create a whole bunch of services based on the Compose instructions. So when you have a swarm, you can also deploy services to the swarm and then inspect them to see what services you added to the swarm. So let's go ahead and do that. So what I'm going to do first is go and add a service to the swarm. So let's say you wanted to add a node server to the swarm. You would do a command like this: docker service create replicas 1. And basically replicas is the number of these services you want to create or available. Then you would add the name of your service. And I'm going to call it node server 2 because I already created one. And then what is the image you want to add or use to create that particular service? In this case, I want to use the node image from the Docker Hub. And then you want to make sure that you can check where that image is coming from. So in this case, docker.com. So if I go ahead and do this, it's going to create a service for me. So it didn't take that long for me because the image was already in my computer. So basically it just went ahead and created the service. And now if you want to check if that service has been created for you, you can go docker service and again ls, which is basically the command that you want to do when you want to list stuff. And you have the node server 2 that has been created right here. And this is basically how you can actually get started with Swarm. And obviously, this is just a brief overview. And if you want to dig deeper with swarms, and there's a lot more to learn, you can either search for a course on swarms inside of our library, or you can take a look at the tutorials directly on the website.